Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. The Qing dynasty was the last feudal dynasty in Chinese history. During its reign, the romantic escapades of emperors were not uncommon. Among these emperors, Qianlong was particularly renowned for his romantic pursuits, becoming a popular topic of discussion. Throughout his life, Qianlong took 41 consorts, particularly favoring young and beautiful women, which left him with many beautiful memories and regrets in the Imperial Harem. After his death, he left his son, Emperor Jiaqing, with the challenge of managing these concubines. According to relevant historians, it was customary during the Qing dynasty to select talented young women every 3 years. Qianlong lived to be 89 years old and ruled for over 60 years. He not only achieved great political success but also engaged in numerous military campaigns. In the early years of his reign, he waged wars in the Hunan and Guangxu regions, implementing policies to limit the power of local chieftains. From 1747 to the spring of 1749, he subdued the Jinchuan tribes. In 1755, he quelled infighting among the Dzungar Mongols and eliminated the power of the Dawaki faction. In 1756, he suppressed the revolt of the Hui people, and in 1759, he established the position of Governor-General in Ili to strengthen control over the northwestern borders. In 1763, he dispatched troops to dismantle all facilities built by the Russian Empire in the Dzungar region, eliminating their threat. He also established regular patrols along the borders. Like his predecessors, Qianlong valued agricultural development, encouraging land reclamation and the expansion of arable land while also developing frontier regions through population migration. He promoted commerce with lenient policies, leading to the establishment of financial institutions during his reign. This period saw a surge in high-yield crops and a booming population, marking the peak of the Guangxu and Qianlong prosperity. Qianlong was a cultured and charming emperor, writing over 42,000 poems throughout his life. His emotional life was also notable. From a young age, he aspired to increase the number of consorts in the palace to showcase his power and charm. Even in his 80s, he continued to select young women for his harem. His last consort, the 13-year-old Jin Fei, was one of the most tragic figures among his consorts. She entered the palace at a time when Qianlong was nearing death, and it is said he allowed her to share his bed to maintain the illusion of his vitality. Clearly, when Qianlong passed away, Jin Fei had no chance of bearing children and became the youngest widow in the harem. Emperor Jiaqing, faced with the task of accommodating this young stepmother, could only treat her kindly. If Jin Fei had not been favored by the emperor, she might have had the chance to leave the palace. But since she had been intimate with Qianlong, she remained until her death. In addition to Jin Fei, another consort, Wei Jia, attracted attention. Originally a slave, she caught Qianlong's eye and rose to become a royal consort and was ultimately posthumously promoted to empress. Wei Jia's story illustrates how Qianlong broke with previous Qing customs regarding consort selection, allowing women of common birth to enter the palace. Qianlong's 6 southern tours further allowed him to get close to beautiful women from the Jiangnan region, to bring them into his harem. He was willing to grant them noble status to conceal their common origins. This practice was quite bold at the time and reflected his strong pursuit of beauty. After Qianlong's death, Emperor Jiaqing faced a complex situation. His father left behind 9 consorts, some of whom were elderly and others young widows. Jiaqing needed to decide whether to dismiss them all or treat them kindly. Historical records indicate that Emperor Jiaqing, born Yongyan in 1760, was the 15th son of Qianlong. He was established as the crown prince in 1773 and was formally declared the heir in 1795. After Qianlong's abdication, Jiaqing initially resided in Yuqing Palace. And after Qianlong's death in 1799, he began to take over governance. Faced with the political turmoil at the end of Qianlong's reign, Jiaqing launched a campaign of reform and innovation, aimed at consolidating internal affairs and punishing corrupt officials, including the execution of the powerful minister Heshen. After the death of an emperor, the fates of his consorts can vary, with many historical precedents to draw from. The first is burial with the emperor. For instance, Nurhasai's wife, Abihai, was forced to commit suicide following his death. At that time, Hong Taiji, in his bid for the throne, coerced Abihai into killing herself, as well as the mother of Dorgan. Similarly, it is rumored that when Zhu Yuanzhang died, he had dozens of concubines killed while in a hypnotic state to accompany him in death, showcasing extreme cruelty. The second is guarding the tomb. After Liu Bang's death, his empress, Liu Ji, executed Qi Fu Ren with torture and assigned many of the childless concubines to guard the tomb. The third is becoming a nun. The most famous example is Wu Zetian, who shaved her head and became a nun after the death of Emperor Taizong of Tang. Other ancient consorts were also arranged to become nuns after their emperor's death, spending their lives in solitude, accompanied only by flickering candles and ancient scriptures. The fourth is taking possession. Some former imperial consorts were reintegrated into the harem. A notable case is Empress Xiao, who married 6 emperors. She was originally the empress of Emperor Yang of Sui. After his death, she was captured multiple times and became a concubine for other emperors, ultimately enjoying a peaceful life in the palace under Li Shimin. However, Emperor Jiaqing chose a more merciful approach. Instead of executing these consorts, he provided them with a relatively peaceful life. Under Jiaqing's reign, the 9 concubines left by Qianlong were moved to a special palace, where they received generous treatment. Particularly, noble consorts Ying and Wan resided in Shokang Palace, receiving a fixed salary. Even those of lower status were provided with adequate living conditions. In contrast, younger widows like Jin Fei and Shou Guiren had to endure solitude for the rest of their lives. They were forced into widowhood, living out their days in the palace. Although their living conditions were favorable, the loneliness they faced was inevitable. According to historians, in a feudal society, women's fates were often dictated by men. Whether it was Jin Fei or Wei Jiashi, their lives were heavily influenced by the emperor, leaving little room for personal choice. Jin Fei, despite her youth and beauty, ended her life in solitude as a widow. Wei Jiashi, though elevated to a position of power, was merely a pawn in a game of authority. These women undoubtedly enjoyed material comforts in the Forbidden City, but their spiritual loneliness and helplessness were often overlooked. They were regarded as appendages to men, unable to choose their destinies, reflecting the tragic reality of women under a feudal autocratic society. Moreover, through a retrospective on Qianlong's extravagant life and Jiaqing's handling of consorts, we not only see the complexity of historical figures but also reflect on the oppression of women in feudal society. While Qianlong's romantic escapades are noteworthy, the tragedies left in the wake of his beauty are equally worthy of contemplation. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.